Hey, why not?
Okay, I'll call a meeting to order. Everyone can rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Take seats. Okay, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
You got it.
I'll second that.
Austin.
Aye.
Dottie.
Aye.
Graver.
Aye.
Huber.
Aye.
Becky.
Aye.
Okay, the first thing on the agenda is the district community spotlight. We have the charter school applicant presentation.
And we're going to take off from that.
Yeah, that is correct.
Yes, Kimberly knows what she's doing. I'm a left-handed history major, so I practice what she's doing. Good evening. We, the Merit Academy Founding Committee, thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to consider our application. My name is John Dill. I'm joined here by other members for the Merit Academy community, including Jason Ludley, Nicole Wagner, and Kimberly Porter. Our bios are in the application we submitted back on the 30th of September with about 475 pages of other data. Given the size of the application, tonight we would like to hit some high points, but in particular, bring you the thoughts of some of the parents, community leaders, and subject matter experts who have so strongly influenced what we submitted. This is our agenda tonight. As everything is virtual on COVID, we have included various parent voices and some other clips to help discuss how we got started, what the inputs were, and how we arrived at the Merit Academy solution. When my twin daughters were just born and still in the Memorial Hospital NICU, my wife and I signed them up for the Classical Academy waitlist. We were thrilled to have this method as a potential option to meet their educational needs. After we moved up the pass when they were 4, we dropped from the TCA waitlist because of the driving commitment. About 8 years later, we found an increasing number of parents who are interested in a classical core knowledge education for their children. After speaking with an organizational psychologist in that capacity, we began a small, underpublicized effort to gather additional data through a needs assessment. In the interest of transparency, it bears noting that this subject matter expert is a member of the WPSD Board of Directors. Word of mouth about this effort spread, and families coalesced around the idea of an additional option in the UPass region for their students. We had an organizational meeting one cold evening at Memorial Park picnic area and created a founding committee of volunteers, parents, and community members. From there, we sought additional parent input via a website and interest form. Overall, our conversations revealed families desire additional school options. Additional research and conversations also revealed that city and county leaders are concerned over an aging demographic and underrepresented families with young children presenting a challenge for the UPass area. These common themes are captured in the very representative following comments. After these presentations, I'll be followed by Mr. Jason Woodley.
Everybody know to come to and chat a little bit about American. My name's Derek. My wife Christina has lived up here in Little Rock since 2004. Your voice. Who all all attend CSCS, our oldest being in 7th grade. And he's been at CSCS the whole time, which has been an amazing school for us. The downside to CSCS, as I'm sure many of you know, is that once you get to 7th grade, you've got to go down to Colorado Springs. And while we love CSCS, I don't know that I want to have my kids driving up and down the pass on a regular basis. So having the option of Merit Academy as a choice for us, where our kids can stay in the community and get a great education, would really be an outstanding option for us. So I just wanted to come and share those thoughts in support of Merit Academy getting approved, and I hope that it can, and we get to potentially explore it and enjoy it. Thanks so much for hearing me out. Have a great day.
Hello, we are Tony and Catherine Perry, and we live at 330 Ponderosa Court right here in Woodland Park. Our children are now adults, but they still live in the area, and we'd be thrilled to have our grandchildren grow up as a part of RE2. Our children both attended stellar charter schools outside of Teller County, and it served their educational needs very well, but it did prevent them from being a part of their home district. I've been involved in charter education since 2001, and I've seen firsthand the remarkable results when districts are focused on truly meeting the needs of all students.
Education is vital to the health of the community, and we support a strong public education system. As a business leader in Woodland Park, I support any initiative that improves the education options for local students. The Merit Academy will be part of the Woodland Park School District and will offer that other option. This will strengthen the school district.
Each family has to work hard to understand what is best for their own children's educational needs and to understand their individual learning styles. Charter education meets that need. We believe that the overall census of RE2 will go up by opening the Merit Academy.
Ultimately, the question the school board needs to answer is, what is our primary mission? If the answer is the education of our kids, then there is no downside for voting to approve the Merit Academy. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us.
Hello, my name is Jason Ledley, and I want to thank you for allowing me to speak to you this evening. Following our initial genesis and organization, our committee developed a sense of enthusiasm for a notion that had only ever existed as whispers, and we decided there was need for examining whether this notion might gain traction. We saw evidence of need, and our data mining revealed just that. The information herein can also be referenced on page 4 of our application in the executive summary. The sources of information used to generate our evidence of need are footnoted there. An examination of data available from the U.S. Census Bureau's American Community Survey, the Colorado Department of Education, and the Woodland Park School District uncovers some interesting information. It shows that there are approximately 3,000 school-age children residing within the district, and that more to the point, approximately 1,000 of them do not attend a Woodland Park public school. We felt this data was evidential of need for expanded choice within the district. We'd like to see more Woodland Park children educated in a Woodland Park public school. Beyond examining the potential for need, we moved to gauge interest. The information on this slide also appears on page 6 of our application and continues in section D, evidence of support, which begins on page 16. It is worth noting that in the time since our application was submitted, some of these numbers have slightly changed. Presently, the number of families demonstrating intent to enroll in Merit Academy, should it receive a charter, shows a substantial amount of interest, exceeds 100% of our year 1 budgeted enrollment estimate of 170 students, and surpasses the Colorado League of Charters recommendations for intent to enroll. Our search for information today has also yielded other numbers. For example, of students intending to enroll in Merit Academy at this time, 64 report that they are not currently enrolled in WPSD. In looking forward to the 2021-2022 school year, 111 report that they are either unsure or have decided against enrolling in WPSD. Regarding those unsure, uncertainty is largely underwritten by a lack of resources to access other options. The Merit Academy option would help see these students educated within our community. This led us to the conclusion that there is clearly a desire for additional local options. In entertaining anecdotal evidence, it appears that there is not only a desire for additional local options, but for a classical education option specifically. While we do not have a hard figure in talking with community members, I'd submit for argument that we all know a family who has placed their children in a classical school in the Springs, and several of those classical schools boast considerable wait lists. There is clearly a market for classical education in the Front Range region. Additionally, and while regrettable, we've all known a family that, after a few years of driving down the paths for school, uproot from our community and move closer to their children's school. Merit Academy hopes to have a hand in turning that tide by helping to keep Teller County funds local for Teller County kids, and in turn, hopefully keeping families in our community. Again, there are any number of possible avenues for answering the call for more choice. That said, a public charter school feels like the most egalitarian answer. Families with ample financial resources can access private education. Not all families have the financial resource to access this choice. Families with ample time can homeschool if they choose. Not all families have time to access this choice. Families with time are also able to make the daily trips to and from the Springs to access schools there, many of which are charters. It is a safe assumption that these families, whose schedules center around getting children to and from school, begin to spend their time and money in the Springs instead of in Teller County. Again, accessing this level of choice is not necessarily a reality for all members of our community. For these reasons, it is our belief that the time has come for the introduction of a public classical school within Woodland Park. To voice her support for just that, here is a short statement from parent Amy Wolin.
Hi, I'm Amy Lawrence, and I just wanted to support the application by the Merit Academy Charter School for Woodland Park, because it would give families in the Utah area and Woodland Park area an additional choice for their family education. Thank you.
To help frame what we envision, here are our vision and mission statements. These statements are found on page 4 of the application, as well as page 11, where the process for meeting these statements is discussed in more detail. I'll take a moment to read them aloud. The vision of Merit Academy is to graduate students prepared for success in a free society, promoting civic responsibility and contributing their talents in a flourishing republic by pursuing beauty, truth, and good. Merit Academy's mission will be to cultivate the minds and nurture the hearts with instruction in the principles of moral character and civic virtue, employing time-honored foundations of classical education and core knowledge. To that end, Merit Academy will build a culture around 5 core virtues: valor, responsibility, friendship, goodness, and perseverance. Later in the presentation, we will hear Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. express some ideas reflected in our vision and mission statements. At this point in the presentation, classical education has been mentioned many times, but is yet to be defined. To begin, we'd like to screen a short video discussing the historical roots of classical education.
In referring to his classical education, Thomas Jefferson once said, "I think myself more indebted to my father for this than for all the other luxuries his cares and affection placed within my reach." In the West, classical education was the primary method of education from its beginnings in ancient Greece into the 20th century. Up until 50 years ago, it was the primary method of education in the United States, where it was often called liberal education because it was based upon liberal arts. Socrates was the first of many key figures. He believed democracy could not function without wise and virtuous citizens. He was very interested in searching for the truth by asking questions in order to reveal fallacies, and he encouraged the practicing of virtues. Plato followed Socrates, played a role in establishing an academy where he posed problems to be studied and solved by others, including ones in math and science and philosophy. He as well stressed justice and goodness. Following Plato was Aristotle. He established the Lyceum School, where he would lecture on subjects including natural history and philosophy. In the same tradition, he stressed goodness and virtue as a part of everyday life. He laid the foundation for formal logic. In the 4th century, Augustine brought classical and liberal education to a wider audience. He encouraged the use of the Greek trivium, which included grammar school, logic, and rhetoric. Capella followed in Augustine's footsteps. He played an important role by putting all 7 liberal arts in a single volume and presented them in a condensed form that was widely acceptable to medieval readers. Cassiodorus was a Roman senator and was influential in transforming a monastery into a school. He helped make liberal arts a standardized part of education. Grammar, logic, composition, languages, oratory, math, music, and classic literature were all part of the rigorous curriculum. After a period of dormancy, in the 11th century, liberal education once again began to reemerge as educators focused on reason, nature, and aesthetics. In the 14th century, as the Renaissance flourished, classic liberal education began to be taught beyond the elite intellectuals. In 1635, Boston Latin, the first public school in America, was founded. The original settlers of the Massachusetts Bay Colony believed that the success of a democratic society depended upon how they educated their children. They started a school to ensure their children had the tools needed for self-government. In 1776, 5 Boston Latin alumni signed the Declaration of Independence, including Benjamin Franklin, Samuel Adams, and John Hancock. Apart from those attending Boston Latin, almost all of the other signers had a classical education. In 1778 and 1780, Thomas Jefferson introduced a bill that would have established the first general public school system in the nation. He proposed it to ensure that self-governance would be successful, focusing on accumulation of knowledge, character, and civic education. Through the 19th century and into the mid-20th century, typical liberal education in the primary and secondary level in the U.S. embraced the study of classic literature, great books, writing, composition, and languages, as well as core knowledge of history, science, math, and English. By the mid-20th century, classic liberal education was being met with significant resistance, and by the late 20th century, it had all but faded away in popularity. But hope remained. And since the 1990s, charter, magnet, and private schools have begun to bring back classical education.
The video discusses the traditional roots of classical education. We've taken that approach and adapted it to include all things Rocky Mountains. From this historical background, our school will integrate mathematics, sciences, arts of language, fine arts, music, modern languages, Latin, and history. And now I will take my leave and pass the presentation along to Kimberly Porter. Thank you again.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Porter. I'm going to walk you through our core knowledge curriculum and other key elements of American education. The core knowledge curriculum hinges on a simple and powerful premise that knowledge builds on knowledge. If you have a rich base of background knowledge and vocabulary, it's easier to learn more. If you don't, it's that much harder to read with comprehension, think critically, or solve problems. The core knowledge curriculum combines skill work with learning content. It's not skill work in a vacuum. It's children learning to read while also learning the fundamentals of science or the principles of government. It's combining arts and music as integral parts of the knowledge domain, not as fragments. The curriculum is coherent as it weaves through the subject areas, cumulative as it builds on itself to the grades, and content-specific as it identifies basic, required knowledge in each domain area. More information and studies regarding core knowledge can be found in Appendix E of our application. So, how does this work? By clearly specifying important events, people, and ideas in each subject, the core knowledge sequence presents a practical answer to the question, what do our children need to know? Discussion and extension activities span multiple subjects. Immersing students in the study of a domain provides time to deeply consider a topic and become familiar with the language and vocabulary. A study on the solar system could include the science of the stars, a reading of early and modern publications about space, the politics and history of discovery, and the math required to locate stars. These deep dives increase the students' comprehension of the world around them and the ability to code new information as it is presented. For early elementary students, this is seen through read-alouds that expose children to vocabulary and content at an age where their listening comprehension surpasses their ability to absorb information from print. This exposure then increases their ability to comprehend even higher level print information, in turn increasing their reading level. At later grades, this integrated content provides meaningful connections that support understanding and retention. There are fewer gaps from year to year. Explicit identification of what children should learn at each grade level ensures a coherent approach to building knowledge across all grade levels. The sequence supports children below grade level by providing a roadmap of foundational knowledge, not just skills. Our combination of core knowledge and classical education are very popular along the Front Range. One of our local educational pioneers has been assisting us in this journey. Here's Mark Hyatt to talk about our choice of curriculum foundation.
Hi, I'm Mark Hyatt. I'm the former president of the Classical Academy, TCA in Colorado Springs. I just wanted to make a comment about why I think a core knowledge school like Merritt Academy will fit in perfectly up there in Teller County. For one reason is we have huge demand with a long wait list. So there's a lot of people interested in this traditional flavor of education. We use a lot of the source documents, not historians' interpretations of what the source documents said. We use the trivium, grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Like I said, a more traditional approach to education. I just think that Merritt Academy would be a wonderful item on the menu of the great selections up in the Woodland Park School District.
As Mark mentioned, a charter school of this type will attract young families to the region and help us retain that community as children grow. I don't think it's a stretch to say we all know someone who eventually moved down the path after getting tired of a long school commute. This loss of community is more than just tax dollars and friends. It's the money spent on dining and shopping down there as well. We want to keep our time and our money in the community we love, the one where we've already chosen to raise our children. As a parent-led effort, Merritt aims to be an asset to the community. Our health system promotes volunteering and local projects. Our school enhancement activities are rooted in the local environment. With several Woodland Park organizations and resident leaders already expressing interest in sharing their expertise for activities like Civil Air Patrol, archery, outdoor ed, ham radio, music, marksmanship, and much more. Here's a Woodland Park parent discussing her desire to stay local. More parent letters and signatures of support can be found in Appendix D.
Hi, my name is Jenny Abercrombie. We are locals to Woodland Park, but we drive our second grader down to the Springs every day for school to Vanguard. We also have a pre-K kid, and right now we're planning to start him in kindergarten for Vanguard for next year. And the only way the kids are going to be up to a Woodland Park school is if Merritt gets off the ground. And also, I'm an naturopathic doctor, and my practice is based in the Springs because I want my medical practice be near where my kids go to school. So if my kids come up to school to Merritt in Woodland Park, then I can also bring my medical practice up here to Woodland Park. I do women's healthcare, and I also do pediatrics. Both are areas that are community needs. So let's get Merritt off the ground because I want my kids to go to school in Woodland Park.
I've talked you through a number of Merritt's key elements already, and we'll expand on a few more shortly. I want to pause and look at how all these key elements come together. Each foundational piece is an integral building block of a healthy school and a strong education. Let's let John demonstrate how this works.
Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to consider our application. We think it's easy to get distracted by individual details when writing or even reading an application this size. But Merritt Academy is an interconnected system. We start with a foundation of values. We believe in goodness, perseverance, friendship, responsibility, and valor. We added to these values our vision and our mission. We wanted both vertical and horizontal integration. Some of the horizontal integration methods within the grades and ages include using the classical approach. We use a knowledge-rich curriculum with common subjects like Latin. Some of the vertical integration that ties different grades and ages together includes using the host system, an integrated curriculum, in-field experts, and a uniform adapted from the classical approach to our Rocky Mountain environment. We value all members of our community and want them all to succeed by using things like a positive behavior intervention and support system. We use intensive tutoring to help each other. We have multi-age integration so that children are working at an appropriate level for their own expertise. And finally, we value our teachers very highly and have built in plenty of planning time so that they can provide the very best that they're capable of doing. Throughout, we want to prepare our students for life along the Front Range, as well as in the wider world. We will use our enhancement program to help do this. Enhancements will include things like the Civil Air Patrol, or CAP, program. And we'll leverage some of our local environment to help provide equine resiliency training for all students. We feel that Merritt Academy will fill a needed niche within the UPass area because this will provide parents with a choice in the educational approach to their children's schooling. We think this is an egalitarian approach because parents who currently have time or money now can find that choice, but other parents cannot, and we want to bring this option to them. And ultimately, this is about parental control of the children's education. Both the education and the school will be firmly under parent control. Merritt will draw upon and in turn provide value to the local community. This goes back to our Rocky Mountain focus, using local expertise who are very excited about bringing into the school system. And then in turn, we'll repay that with community service organized along through our host system. Finally, we will use the freedom that waivers allow us to tie everything together. Small but important tools will include at-will employment, a flexible calendar, and block scheduling. We realize that a 470-odd page application is a heavy lift to read and consider. We thank you for your consideration of the entire system and look forward to working together to make the dream and vision of Merritt Academy a reality.
Thank you, John. Qualified and passionate subject matter experts are another key element. Job descriptions and roles can be found in Section H and Appendix I, so we'll review our org chart just briefly here. The Board of Directors oversees the Dean of School, manages fiscal responsibility, and provides school oversight while representing the community. The three key positions that will be hired first are Dean of School, Dean of Academics, and Director of Finance. The Dean of School is our lead administrator. This position is equivalent to school principal and will be a role model of Merritt's vision and mission, in addition to being well-versed in classical education and core knowledge. The Dean of Academics is overseen by the Dean of School and manages the academic operations. The Dean of Academics functions much like a vice principal, overseeing curriculum and instruction. The Director of Finance reports to the Board of Directors and is responsible for fiscal management and other business supports. Merritt has already been receiving mentorship through Doug Herring to fine-tune our budget to ensure financial stability. The Director of Development will be responsible for people, processes, and infrastructure. The DoD works with the School Accountability Committee in implementation of proper assessment and improvements of employee and parent satisfaction, school accountability and engagement, similar to the DAC. Of critical importance here is the School Accountability Committee, which is similar to the DAC as well in that it's primarily made up of parents and community members to oversee school accountability. It's vital for charter schools to be governed by parents and community members. The SAC will have an employee representative of each level, upper school, grammar school, and dean or director. However, the primary makeup will be parents and representative community members. Moving on, another important aspect we would like to highlight for you is our schedule. Here's Nicole to walk you through it.
Thank you, Kimberly. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole Wagner. I will begin by talking a little bit about a typical day in the upper and lower grades. In the interest of time, I will not delve into the details of the days. If you would like to examine those further, please reference pages 46 and 47 of our application. What I will note is that for the lower grades, K through 5, Monday through Thursday will consist of a normal schedule with our high dosage tutoring beginning in the second grade. On Fridays, primary students will join the upper grades for house activities and age-specific enhancements. Some of the enhancements will include, but will not be limited to, equine resiliency, interior design, archaeology and paleontology, astronomy, and mountain sciences. I have spoken with the education director at the Dinosaur Resource Center, and they're very excited at the idea of partnering with us on developing a curriculum. It would be possible to create a real specialized class due to the charter waivers that allow in-field experts to teach specialized classes like this without being CBE certified. It also connects to our goal to incorporate local experts into our schools. For the upper grades, we'll be using a block schedule where math, English, science, and history humanities will occur prior to lunch Monday through Thursday and in the mornings on Friday. This opens up a large block of time each afternoon for enhancements. These courses will align with Colorado's academic standards and may shift quarterly or by semester depending on interest. Some of these courses will be Civil Air Patrol, archaeology, mountain sciences, mountain biking and repair, robotics or droning, choir, orchestra, instrumental, theater, art, strategic gaming, financial literacy, and much more. All students will participate in an intensive tutoring session 40 minutes a day. Guidance or tutoring will be available for students who need it, and an opportunity will be presented for mentorship for students who may be excelling. One of the founding concepts that Merit Academy is built upon is the idea of 5 core virtues: valor, goodness, perseverance, responsibility, and friendship. An integral part of our approach is character development, and through our house system, Merit Academy students will participate in required community projects and activities. To speak a little more about character development, here is a short video featuring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Dr. King was a student of the classics. Arts education equipped him to think outside the box. If the goal of his education had been merely career training, the civil rights movement might have never happened. In fact, he devised his plan to fight for civil rights nonviolently after reading Gandhi during his education. Gandhi had devised his theory based upon reading the thoughts of another past philosopher, Thoreau, and his theory of civil disobedience.
But I remember hearing a message by the president of Howard University, Dr. Marty Kaplan, and the just returned from India. He spoke in Philadelphia on his trip to India and the whole philosophy of Gandhi and passive and nonviolent resistance. And I was so deeply moved by the message that I went away and brought several books on the Gandhian text. And at that point, I became deeply influenced by Gandhi, never realizing that I would live in a situation where it would be useful to me. And actually useful is actually would apply it. Yeah, that's right.
History owes a debt to King's teachers who never asked, but when we ever used Plato or Aristotle or Thoreau or Gandhi. His education was focused on teaching him to think, to aim for the true, the good, and the beautiful. It equipped him to change the world. It is not the exterior of a person that determines who they are. It is the roots laid that shapes their lives. Our teachers are the roots that shape the health of the tree, our very lives.
We are particularly excited about the inclusion of the house system in the Merit Academy structure. Children will be divided into a house organized around one of the 5 core virtues. This system will tie children of different ages together, strengthening our school. We believe that the house's purpose of mentorship, achievement, outreach, and community service will create positive peer pressure across the Merit community. The house organization will create leadership opportunities for our students to shape their school and build character. This experience will subsequently translate into a much-needed sense of community for our modern world. As special education is an important part of any school, we reached out to an industry expert to assist us in crafting our approach to this area. Here are a few words from Dr. Brian Prince.
Hello, my name is Brian Chris, former Director of Special Education for Poplar Carson School District and currently I'm working for the Charter School Institute part-time, as well as my own private consulting company, Insightful Solutions. And my role in these 2 businesses is to work with charter schools, specifically around their special education programs. I consult with them on their charter applications. I work with them to make sure they have proper programs for students with special needs. And I will say that in the Pikesville region, I'm currently working with 8 schools. Those schools are working with kids just like any other school in our school districts locally. They have students with special needs that include learning disabilities, communication disabilities, even kids with hearing impairments, visual impairments. And how these charter schools do it, they consult a contract with providers or their local school districts, providers such as psychologists, occupational therapists, speech therapists, whatever it takes to meet the needs, just like any other school. I believe that they provide quality programs just like any other school. So I'm strongly in support of the charter schools and their special education programs, and I believe they can meet the needs of all students. Thank you.
For additional details on this approach, please see section Q of our application beginning on page 118. We have a comprehensive approach to assessing our students. Teachers will use formative and summative tools to measure performance growth and ensure academic standards. We will grade on a traditional A to F scale. We will, of course, follow all Colorado and federal requirements. Please see section F beginning on page 51 for more information. At Merit Academy, we are committed to seeing Teller County funds be used to educate all Teller County children. Furthermore, we feel that this classical core knowledge charter school is a draw that will both keep and return many students back to district boundaries through Merit Academy. This return to the community will likely result in increased community cohesion. A balanced budget is included in section G of our application and appendix. One point to note is that this does not account for any anticipated grants or other financial resources. We will not ask for any sales tax revenue going to WPSD and will fully support all efforts to maintain this funding stream for the health of the overall district. One of our prime motivators is to help return Teller students to Teller County. We firmly feel that children who are currently opting out of district are not a number. They are children to educate. A diverse community will have families that desire diverse educational opportunities. They may want to be educated differently, and they deserve to be supported. At Merit, we feel that our goal aligns with the WPSD overall mission. Together, we embrace a culture where all learners are empowered to pursue intellectual, personal, and collective excellence. To wrap up this section, here's a short video further expanding on how a classical education rooted in antiquity is relevant for a rapidly evolving future.
Well, classical education is to train the mind, and this process finds its foundation in the 7 liberal arts: literature, philosophy, language, science, history, mathematics, and fine arts. In a fast-paced world that's changing rapidly, ironically, classical education is more relevant today than it ever has been before.
computer would simplify decision making. Well, in fact, what's happened? Computer does simplify decision making, but it complexifies everything else. We have to make more complex decisions anyway. But we compute it as a source of complexity as well as a machine for dealing with complexity has not yet been fully understood.
I've said this before, but it's worth repeating. It's in Apple's DNA that technology alone is not enough. That it's technology married with liberal arts, married with the humanities, that yields us the result that makes our hearts sing.
Now, the digital age also, it comes at us so fast and in such a great pace that we really wonder whether it does inspire that time for reflection, that time for us to think, that time for us to truly wonder and to look forward. Well, those kinds of things, that effort to try to inspire wonder and to explore and to learn, those things are the essence of a liberal education. And a liberal education is an education for freedom, an education that allows one to speak and to think for oneself, to not be constrained by prevailing wisdom, by fad or fashion, to be truly free and to think for oneself.
There are major disruptions happening in education, in healthcare, in energy, in sectors like that. And the countries, the societies that lead on those, that find the way forward, will literally open up new markets, create value, jobs, wealth, and prosperity that we haven't seen today. And so a liberal education provides for that opportunity to see, to feel, to find awareness, have awareness, to see the gaps and the opportunities. A liberal arts education prepares a student to be a critical and analytical thinker for life, which is absolutely necessary for success in an ever-evolving world.
Merit Academy is focused on working with the WPSD and being part of the solution for all Teller families. This desire started long before COVID, but there's now a critical mass of families who would very much like chartered classical education with a core knowledge curriculum and front-range focused enhancements to be part of the local education solution set. After our conversations, we believe that absent this solution, some families will continue to avoid the UPass region, and a significant percentage of those who are here will continue to seek and find out-of-district options or other alternatives such as homeschooling or podding. Classical education does best when started from a younger age. However, this is not strictly required. Core knowledge allows for students to drop in at later grades. We've had a lot of interest for the middle grades. At this age, students also tend to have younger siblings. The cross-grade integration of merit is bolstered by these younger grades as well. Through conversations with hundreds of parents over the past several months, it is evident that opening as a K-10 school in the first year is what is most desired by families in our community. While this will be challenging, this will provide the strongest foundation of highest quality educational instruction because a school with high school grades at opening is more attractive to the highly qualified and talented Dean of Schools candidates needed to lead an amazing school. Providing high school courses and serving a small class of freshmen and sophomores at opening can attract exceptional subject matter experts who would also serve students in grades 6 through 8, thus bringing highly trained educators into grades for which recruiting is often more difficult. Opening with grades K through 10 will allow greater cohesion among the faculty in the first year. Merit values the vertical alignment of academics across K through 12. Upper grade teachers are subject experts, and through our purposeful all-faculty Friday collaboration time, these experts can coordinate the curriculum track through all grades. Opening only a portion of grades will make it difficult to fulfill the full educational potential. One of the wonderful differentiators of Merit Academy is the whole school culture. Upper school students tutor, help, and mentor lower school students. The house system integrates opportunity for high school students to be role models for those younger students in their house. It is a means for developing that sense of connection and practicing many of our core virtues as a whole student body. Opening K through 10 will permit teachers to grow and develop that strong classical curriculum alongside students and to learn of the content delivered in grades below and above the one they teach. It is what the community wishes. Many families of freshmen and sophomores desire the classical approach and Merit's program for their students, just as the families of kindergartners and all grades in between do. Additionally, families who have more than one child want their children in one school. A K-10 range of grades at opening meets this community desire as well. Thank you very much for your time and attention to not only this presentation, but our entire application. We look forward to working with you to make this dream a reality. In closing, we have a short final comment from one of our community parents, after which Ms. Wagner has a short update for the questions we received after last week's meeting and to include the latest number of intents to enroll.
Hi, my name is Garrett Meyer. I'm 6. I'm here in Woodland Park. When I moved, me and my family back here a few years ago, we knew it was probable that we would be driving down the pass to send our kids to school with the lack of options that we have here in Woodland Park. Thought of a charter school here in town, with classical education, is something that's drastically needed here. I hope you guys give careful consideration to this project.
Hello, everyone. This is Mark and Mary Jean Weaver. We live here in Woodland Park. We've been here for about 20 years. And we just want to lend our support to the proposed Merit Academy, the public charter school. We'll be here in Woodland Park and serve this region.
We raised our children here in the public school system. We have so many good memories, and it's been such an amazing thing. But we feel like it would be wonderful if there was another style of learning, another option for families to draw them here, to keep them here, because they can educate their children in a way that works for each individual child.
Yeah, so I'm in business here in real estate. Mary Jean is a pharmacist here. So we hear a lot of what works and what doesn't work, what people are looking for and hoping for in terms of education. And we just think that a public charter school with a classical training model would be a great addition to the things that parents are trying to consider for their education for their kids.
I hope you will consider this as an option. We believe it would be an amazing addition to what we already have.
We do. Thank you for your time.
Okay, so that concludes our presentation, and I just want to take a moment before the Q&A to give you guys some updates since last week. So first, in regard to our grant application to the CCSP, we heard back last Friday that we did not qualify for it this year. One of the requirements was to condense our 470-page application into 26 pages while still keeping very detailed information. We were not able to manage that this year, but we do have their notes from their rubric, and we will be able to reapply next year with a much stronger application. When we submitted the CCSP grant, our experts did warn us that it's very difficult for startups to get this grant the first year, so while we were hopeful, it's not surprising to us that we did not. I have also spoken this week with another foundation, which is very interested in speaking more once the board approves the charter, and we will continue to pursue additional outside resources just as any other school does, to help improve their bottom line. Most of the people that I'm speaking with, they all want that board approval before that conversation will continue. So we're kind of in that chicken and egg situation. I spoke with the IRS on Friday and answered a few questions they had regarding our 501c3 application. And he told me it should be about another month or so before we hear back on that. So considering it's the IRS, I'll take that. From the final question of the DAC Q&A last week, it was apparent that more clarification would be appreciated on what community involvement there will be on the board and in the school. We will have a community member sit on our board, as well as several community members on the SAC and several on the Finance Accountability Committee. We've already had community members who are not parents to young children approach us interested in volunteering on these committees, and we definitely want that community involvement in the school. We'd also like to clarify the question about good standing from last week's SAC meeting. Any expulsion would be in accordance to the CRS 22-33-106, which governs these type of disciplinary issues. So that was what our attorney advised us on. And then finally, I just want to take a moment to expand on the community aspect of this project. Over the past 3 years, WPSD lost 200 students without Merit's presence, not including COVID. We got this number through the CBE, as well as the WPSD budget. This is an aging community, which is great for retirement couples, but the county and city leaders and businesses frequently talk about the need for more families and the balance that comes with that. For instance, a family of 5 or 6 spend a lot more on groceries than a retired couple. When families think about moving to Woodland Park, 2 main points seem to be considered the most: the community and the schools. Current school options are WPSD, CSCS, homeschooling, or driving down the pass. If your choice is CSCS or driving, why move up here? Merit started over a year ago by talking with parents, businesses, real estate agents, and community leaders to come to this conclusion. It was evident that adding more school choice in the form of a classical charter to the educational options currently available could increase families moving up here, retain some families considering leaving, and complement the district nicely. A common thought among many whom I spoke with was that it could help improve the economic leakage down the pass. In the development of the vision of Merit Academy, the founders spoke with many families who choiced out about what would have prevented them from leaving and what would potentially bring them back to our community. We listened to what they had to say, and Merit was born. Our intent to enroll numbers show 112 students who are currently unsure or not going to attend a WPSD school next year. That would be 112 students that would remain in our community. I would also like to point out that we have not done any advertising for the school. All of our intent to enrolls have come to us through word of mouth. Consider how many more students we haven't reached yet that we can keep from going down the pass. We strongly feel that this educational option would help increase community cohesion by keeping more of our students and families in this community, which we all love. We recognize that the school board has made decisions in the past for the health of the district, and we strive to be another means of achieving that goal. So that's what we've got for our presentation.
All right, so at this point, we will accept questions from the community. They won't be asked this evening because those are questions that the board will gather and will discuss with Merit next week. We have a meeting scheduled next week. The questions can be emailed to Kelly Haven, and that email address is khaven, HAVIN, V as in Victor, at WPSDK12.org. So anyone online that would like to ask questions watching, please go ahead and send your questions in, and the board will review those and have those discussions with Merit next week. As far as board members, do any of the board members have any questions?
Is that questions and comments or just?
That's questions and comments. It's not just questions. Thank you for clarification. All right. Any board members have any questions?
I do.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Take it away. And first of all, thank you very much for that presentation. I've actually seen it twice, but just seeing it again, there is a lot there. So really appreciate all the hard work and passion you guys have put into this project. We care just as much as all of you for the kids in our community, and we want the best education choices for them as well. So we're all on the same page, and I think we all want the same thing. So I just wanted to thank you for everything that you're doing. So I just had a quick question. It's kind of a comment question, but a couple times you mentioned that there's 111 or 112 students that have, I guess, provided intent that they do not plan to return to the school district?
Correct.
And I was wondering if you guys were able to gather any reasoning behind that, because my fear is that people may, and I guess I'm looking for your opinions on this and your thoughts, I'm sure you may have talked about this, is this whole concept of division in the community. And my concern is, I think your intent is wonderful. It's let's give another choice. This is a different approach. But my concern is that you're going to have families that for some reason or another, and there's probably multiple, they're not happy with something at the schools right now in our school district. And so they're like, well, this is another way for me to get away and try a different school versus this is really a different option I want for my child. This is just another way I can go get away from the Woodland Park School District because I'm not happy. And the thing that concerns me is that does create divisiveness between families and students in the community. We see it all the time with community members going down to Manitou. You guys are on the Woodland Park community page. Any negative thing that comes up about our school district, the Manitou people are chiming in because Manitou is the place to go. And so it's divisiveness. It's people that live up here that are unhappy with something in the school district, and so they, continuously use a vice to kind of split us apart, and it hurts our kids. They have sports together. It's just not a good example of, I think, what we want. So, I guess, what is your thought on that, and what you're bringing, to the community, and how, what's your thought on that?
Sure, absolutely. And this is something that we have definitely thought quite a bit about, because we do not want to be something that is divisive to our community. What I would submit for argument is that division is already here. You have a third, roughly, of your students, well, not your, but these students of the district leaving. That division is already here. And what we really sought to achieve when we set out on this journey was to find a way to help keep kids local. And so they're not going down the path. So it's more of, yes, there are different schools up here, but we're all still in Woodland Park. We're not having a third of our kids go to Colorado Springs and Manitou, but everybody's here. So the kids can still do sports together. They still have friends in the community. It's not as, I do not feel it is as divisive as having kids go down the paths. It, like I said, it keeps them in our community.
Right, and I appreciate that thought. I guess I understand that there's always going to be the kids that are going to go down. I'm talking about the children and the students that you said there's 111 that currently go here.
Sure, yeah.
And so if you guys don't exist, they will they still go here, or will they go down the hill? Do you have any thought?
Correct. So we are currently at 192 intent to enrolls in total. The current number in WPSD are 114. We have 78 that are not currently in WPSD this year that are on the intent to enroll list. Next year, of those 192, that's where 80 said that if merit did not exist, they would return to WPSD schools, but 112 said that they would not. So it's a much higher number than the ones who are not attending WPSD this year. So it's there's still going to be those students who leave next year regardless. And the 112 number, that was, we just asked a simple question: if merit is not an option, will you stay in WPSD or will you choice out somewhere else? And that 112 number was the unsures and the we're not coming back. And some of the we're not coming back are already not here. Of those, the 78 who are currently not here, not one of them said that they would come back to district next year if merit did not open. So the ones who are gone are staying gone. And then there are more leaving as well. if that number does that answer your question a little bit more clearly?
Yeah, and I guess it's hard for you probably to know the reason for all those people and why they're not here, but those are, things that as a district, of course, we would like people to communicate and talk about, issues or things or new ideas that they might want to bring into our schools. Like you guys have a lot of things that you've said I think we could bring into our schools, honestly. I mean, especially the enhancements, they're so awesome. They're really thinking outside the box. And that's kind of just where I think some families have mentioned to me, why do we have to create a whole new school? Why can't we bring some of these ideas into our current schools and we're a small community as it is, so just having another school they feel like is just gonna further divide. So these are some of the comments that I've gotten from the community members. So I just wanted to share some of that with you because I don't think we've discussed some of those.
Yeah.
And I know those are the warm and fuzzies and the gray areas, but they're out there and they're real, coming from our community. So I just wanted you guys to know some of those thoughts are out there, and I'm sure you've discussed those. So I thought it would be a good opportunity for you to maybe talk about those a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, we have thought about all of these things as well. And we've had a lot of parents talk to us. Some just prefer a different education. Some are very opinionated on why they don't want the choice that is here. And so everybody's got a different opinion. In terms of being able to incorporate some of these aspects into WPSD currently, I would argue that the vision of Merit Academy is an entire K-12 vision. It's not, we're going to add Latin, and so that's it. It's taking kids from kindergarten and starting with the house system and all of the enhancements and building the school and the culture around that. And as Jason, I think it was Jason or maybe John said, we can still bring kids in later because a fifth grader is going to have a lot more ability to understand what a second grader learns. And so they can catch up fairly easily. But to just take one part, like in John's video of the Jenga, the building blocks, that was kind of to try to demonstrate how if you take one piece away, it might still hold. But if you start picking pieces, the entire system crumbles. Because it's an entire vision that the school is built on, not just one specific thing. So that's why I really don't think just picking a couple of the enhancements or this or that out of it and adding that to WPSD would really accomplish the same thing that we're trying to with Merit.
And on that note, if you have something that works and you're like, oh man, they love it at Merit, absolutely add it to Woodland Park School District. I mean, we're all in the district. It's all the same group of kids, the same parents. And like you said, they all hang out on the weekends. So if you find them going to soccer games together and they're all conjugating Latin, then sure, add it to Woodland Park School District. So just to piggyback on some of the stuff that Nicole said, part of it is the core knowledge, obviously, and the classical knowledge that does make Merit different. But that doesn't mean that some of the smaller things aren't something that we can build on as a community. And to piggyback on the point about there being other class at other schools potentially causing division, we have 3 elementary schools. And those don't cause division. It's okay. Some elementary didn't work for my kid. I'll take him to Columbine. Okay, Columbine. Oh, I know, I'm saying, but that's not necessarily a division in the community. That's part of fulfilling Woodland Park School District's mission to educate all kids. And it's great that we have that option. So let's add some more options here and keep the kids up here.
To tie into this question, had your group at all ever thought of other avenues rather than a separate charter school? Maybe approaching the board and talking about what your ideas are, that we might be able to create a school within the district, school within the schools. I mean, those are potential options. And so that would actually create that togetherness rather than the concerning divisiveness. And so that's, I mean, have you guys thought about other options other than a separate charter school?
Do you want me to take it?
really, we didn't come to the discussions with the parents with a set answer.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing.
Okay.
Thank you.
We didn't come to the discussions with the parents with a set answer. What is reflected here is really came from them, what they wanted. And they wanted a classical charter school. And the waivers that are in some account, the one annex, I'm sure you guys read it. The waivers associated would be with a charter school approach. This also goes with, as we talked to parents and then subsequently discovered the rich culture in the Front Range of charter schools. And we've been stunned with the amount of support we've had from the charter schools down the Front Range. They've just been so giving and so supportive of us. It's amazing. Because we're just parents, but they are the guys who are actually doing it right now, and the ladies that are actually doing it. Really, the charter school approach is what fit best with the classical education. And back on the community, if we think of community as a quilt, patchwork quilt, our kids and everybody is on a different piece of the quilt. And just because a kid goes to one school doesn't mean they're not on the peak swim team or the Little League team, or dad's not in our mom is not in the VFW, or they're not in the Northeast Teller Fire Department, and they're not in all these other organizations. Because no one organization is the whole community. But if they leave UPass, then we've lost them from the whole community. So if having a different patch in that quilt helps keep people involved and up here and brings people, we really believe, we've got some applications from folks who don't live here yet. They're moving here and they've heard about Merit, they're surfing the web, they find our website and they're applying with intent to roll in, I think, California and Hawaii type people. And this isn't somebody from Fountain coming up. So we think we will bring people and we think we'll retain people so that VFW, the Teller County Sheriff's Search and Rescue, the Teller Posse, all these things that make up the whole community will be strengthened by keeping these people. Last point on that. I've seen data that Teller County's average age is 10 years older than the national average. That makes for a very elderly community. And that gives you an unbalanced community in terms of the national average. And we think if we can bring more young families with more young kids and retain the ones we have, will help balance that and will make for a healthier community.
I'm just thinking out loud on charter schools in rural districts. Have you looked into that very much, kind of how charter schools fit into rural districts and the impacts of charter schools in rural districts?
We have, yeah, we have read a lot on everything about the charter schools. Mm-hmm. And what we have really come to as a conclusion is that charter schools tend to improve the entire district health. It doesn't happen the first year because there's always that adjustment phase. But after 3-4 years, it tends to, the saying, the rising tide raises all boats kind of thing. Everybody seems to improve when a charter school does enter. So
what about the demographic makeup of the charter school versus the other schools in the district?
So everything that we have done in the application, we modeled off of the percentages in the district currently, the free and reduced lunch, the special ed, the English language learners, because we didn't have anything else to go on. When we do the intent to enrolls, you cannot ask legally if a child has a special need or right. If there or any of that information. So we are just having to assume that with the community outreach, which we will do, try to get out to everybody so everybody has the information to make a choice, that we will end up with roughly the same percentages as WPSD.
Okay, and I'm not asking about what you expect will happen here based on what you're modeling. I'm asking about what's actually occurring down the Front Range.
Oh, what's actually occurring?
Mm-hmm. Well, and the Front Range is not rural. So
no, that's not rural, yeah.
But so that's going to give us a little bit of a skew. But that's my concern, is being able to provide the education for all students that are up here. And I'm a little bit concerned that in the work to try to pull students back that have already chosen to leave, that we might be creating more harm across the district rather than improving the health. So that, I mean, it's a concern. I'm not saying that's a decision I've made, or I think that really there. I'm just thinking out loud and how those effects will occur.
That last comment, did you say that you're worried about if we bring students back into the district, that's going to harm the district?
No, it was that in the attempt to bring them back. So one of the points for merit is we have these students that have already chosen, and they're not numbers by any stretch of the imagination. But they've chosen for whatever reason to leave the district. And you've got a number of them that have stated the intent to return if Merit Academy is here. So my concern is in the attempt to try to bring those students back, I think it was 78. And in the attempt to bring 78 students back, we're actually potentially harming the larger number of students across the district. So, and not focusing on that, it's focusing on the, again, in rural areas, the demographic makeup of the charter schools compared to the rest of that rural district. That's my concern.
Yeah, sure. So that's what I was going to speak to. And I could say, I think I speak for all of us when I say one of our biggest fears is like having to field an answer that we don't have a crystal clear, or having to field a question that we don't have a crystal clear answer to. I know that two of our mentors and consultants, Mark Hyatt and Brad Miller, spoke to this question specifically during our meeting with the DAC last week. And so if it would be permissible, what I would love to do is confer with them and try to get an actual really focused answer to what's the demographic makeup, generally speaking, look like for charter schools in rural districts like this one, and then communicate that even more clearly when we meet next week, if that'd be okay.
That would be fine. And this one, so the 78, and am I correct in that number? It's the 78 that are not here that have signed the intent to be here if merit is approved. Do I have that number right?
I could reference my notes. Yes, that's correct. Okay. And maybe as a point of clarity, by not here, and maybe the semantics, we may be saying the same thing, may live and reside in the community, but aren't currently enrolled in school within WPSD.
Right, they currently
have opted
somewhere else.
Yeah, choice for some other option. That's correct.
How many of those are already in a charter school? Do we know?
I don't know that we have a number for that. I don't believe our questionnaire has been that detailed.
Okay.
I have another, and these are more comments, and because I think it's a good time for you guys, since people are listening, to maybe, if I'm hearing stuff from the community, I'm just going to share so that you guys can talk to it. So I apologize if I don't want to be attacking. I just want you to try to give you guys a chance to respond to some of these community questions. So one of them has more to do with the teaching community, and I think there's a concern, like if we truly are going to lose over 100 kids, which is a lot, I mean, next year, our numbers just came out. And so if we're going to lose 100 and it's just, and I know you're trying to bring kids back, and I love that, bring them back, get them back in the community, but let's be honest, I mean, you also are going to be having to take kids from our current schools, and they're going to feed into your school because there's going to be people that want to try something different.
Sure.
So when that happens, the end result is that our schools then get smaller in number, which means we might not need as many teachers. So teachers are concerned that, well, wait a minute, is my job going to be going away? Because now we're not going to need as many teachers. And so that's one of the concerns. And on top of that, from the parents' perspective, we already are having to, we cut programs based on budget. And if we lose students, that's our income. So if we're losing programs, and we're losing more students and more money in our schools, does that mean we're going to lose more programs? So those are some of the fears of shifting students from our current base schools to your school.
Well, if I can tag into that real quick.
Yeah.
And one of the things is because we have lost students in the past, and I just want to make sure that you guys are hearing some of the concerns. We've had a number of students leave the district to be able to participate in larger sports programs. And with the numbers, with opening another school, with separating that, it brings the potential of actually decreasing our level for the sports activity. I mean, that's a concern that someone had brought up earlier to me, not tonight during the brief, that's just in discussion earlier, but just so that you guys have thoughts in your heads as well about wider ranging impacts to the district that you might not be thinking about as you're also trying to build Merit Academy.
I will say, and I don't know if I can speak for everybody behind me, but I will say I have not had one conversation with a parent who has said that the reason they left the district was for sports.
Oh, I have.
It's okay. Well, I have, of the ones that we have spoken to about Merit,
Right.
that has not been a factor in their choice to leave the district.
Okay.
So, although I mean, we will definitely think about that. And
Yeah.
It's just that it hasn't come up.
Okay.
Since you brought up athletics, because we're going all over the place, but a little bit, I guess that's a base question. Do you guys think that the kids at Merit would just be part of our athletic programs? Or are you, like TCA has like their own athletics, right? But it's big.
Yeah.
So the question is that, and you guys aren't going to have a lot of high school kids starting up right away, so it's going to be very difficult probably for you to have high school teams. So is your intent that your kids would then still be part of our school programs here, or how does that all work?
So I don't believe that is the intent. Of course, for those of us on the steering committee, there's a lot of enthusiasm about this idea, and something that's often born out of that enthusiasm is this compelling, to want to offer everything. And I think for some of us, there's the tendency to think back to our high school sports glory days, so to speak. And so again, we recognize there's this tendency and longing to want to offer everything. And then I think, we sort of, in our own steering committee meetings, get through that and come back to a place where we have to start looking at what's realistic, and certainly what's realistic in our first 5 years until we're at maturation. And so the thinking there is that we would be able to offer sports programs that could be fielded by whatever our student census is, with sort of a focus and examination of, as we grow and as we approach maturation, what other sorts of sports, and athletics offerings can we sort of bring into the fold. Again, recognizing that we'll be limited in our offerings coming out of the gate, but also recognizing that that's sort of a reasonable and practical way we've got to go about it. If I can sort of address the other question, because it's certainly an uncomfortable consideration, what starts happening when numbers start fluctuating and people start moving around. And again, I would want to be transparent to say that we share in that the discomfort of that consideration. And so it's been a topic of discussion around our committee table quite often. And where we sort of ended up on it, sort of as a framework to guide our thinking, is that at the end of the day, the district's charge is to educate as many district students as possible. And so if we increase the total census of students that are educated within the district, and again, a charter school is still a district school, then we've actually increased need for teachers. And so the personnel or faculty makeup at any given school over time may look different, but if historically we've been educating 100 students and now we have need across the district to educate 150, for example, we've increased the need for teachers. And so that's sort of how we've, through some discussion, started looking at it, is that part of the aim here, district-wide, is to increase the total student census, again, wherein it would stand to reason that we would increase need for teachers and personnel.
So, and that is a correct statement. However, when the teachers are split and you're actually smaller here, it reduces the ability to provide programming. So please take that into consideration as well as you're considering that. So it's not just numbers, it's the ability to provide programming to all students as well.
On the sports teams,
Yes, sir.
it was really hard in the beginning because we always wanted to talk about the enhancements because they're going to be so much fun. You know, everybody's excited about enhancements. One of our guiding principles was we're not going to have a football team. As we picked through enhancements, we all have things we did well as kids, like Jason said, our glory days. There's no way we're going to compete with the Panthers for some of the larger sports. I doubt we'll have a baseball team. We're going to be focused on those things that are, frankly, low cost and local to the area for our students' sports and those kind of things. So one question, I don't mean to answer a question with a question, how many, given the homeschool example, I'm fairly familiar with the rules on homeschool participation in high school sports. How many homeschoolers do you have that come in for just athletics? Do you have a lot or not many? I have no idea what the answer is.
We have a lot.
You have a lot?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I'm not a lawyer and I didn't sleep in a Motel 6 last night, and I would defer to Jason's question before we get to an absolute answer in accordance with Colorado Revised Statute, whatever. That sort of model is something that we, might be applicable, but we can talk with our subject matter experts to get you an exact answer on that as to what you guys would desire. We desire what the statutes say, but we have no intention of fielding a football team in the next how many years? Or soccer or things, but when you look at things like maybe a men's swim team,
Right.
and some of those complementary type things where we would like to have a lot of our kids swimming, and if there's enough men to have a swim team, and with the Title IX restrictions that have, and you can only have a girls swim team, maybe that's something that we partner and coordinate and don't commit fratricide. I think really that's one of the things we don't want to commit fratricide on each other with athletics or anything else.
Right,
Yeah,
and I
think
think
I stand corrected. We don't have that many homeschoolers. Do you know, Brian? Yeah. Speculation. Tina said not that.
Okay.
I was just going to elaborate on that a little bit too. Is as a charter, we would be a district school, and there are definitely things that we want to collaborate on. And it might be where Merritt has a phenomenal swim team that somebody from the high school wants to join, and there might be a student at Merritt who wants to play football, and so there's a give and take so that we can provide those extra activities and sports activities to all the students in the district who desire them. So as a district school, that is one thing that we would definitely want to discuss more in the contract phase and really fine tune the details on that.
If I could, I want to change gears just a little bit.
Okay.
First of all, it's not lost on me that you've put a tremendous amount of work into this. And it's also been very clear to me that there's been a process that we've all had to follow because we're a policy governance board, and this being the first time that we've actually been in the same room together, even though you've been working on this for months and months and months. I can only imagine that may have generated some frustration at some level. And so I appreciate you coming and sharing what you're sharing with us. I think for me, what's not in question is what's not in question is the, no pun intended, but the merit of this type of education, right? You saw that coming.
Yeah.
So that's not in question. I've personally known many families over the years from the Springs, even from Woodland Park, whose children have benefited from Classical Academy and core knowledge education. That's not in question. And I think it is appropriate that we're talking about the impacts on the district and family and community. I think it's very appropriate because we're having a community meeting right now, even though many of our friends are joining in virtually. So I think that's an appropriate conversation to have as well. And I look forward to more of that next week. I think our role as the Woodland Park School District Board of Directors right now is to assess the validity of the application that you're presenting and to assess whether or not it's sustainable. And we have resources to draw from, for example, the District Accountability Committee that did so much work and presented, and you guys did a fantastic job of fielding so many questions on such short notice. I applaud you for that. And I know that was hard work. You also, at the end of your presentation tonight, you started to, in a sense, answer an anticipated question, which had to do with the denial of a grant that you had applied for through the State Board of Education, the Colorado, charter school program grant. And you stated that a large reason why that happened is because you had to condense a 400+ page document down to 20-something pages. And that being said, the reason why my understanding is the reason why that grant was denied was because there were certain gaps or certain concerns that they had about things like facility, things like budget, or were you underestimating, or were you accurate in your assessment of what it's actually going to cost to run a school, and things like leadership and how the leadership structure is going to work, and things like special education, and do you have a full grasp on what it will take and the complexities of working with such a diverse student group. And so for me, I appreciated you kind of anticipating this coming up, and I guess my question around it is we're trying to assess the validity of the application and trying to assess the sustainability of this. How are you responding to like the feedback that you got from the denial letter? I mean, and the matrix, well, I guess it was a rubrics that you had to kind of like look through, and there were some key bullet points that pointed to those holes, those gaps that the state, the Colorado Department of Education recognized through your application and denied this grant. It was based on merit, not based on the lack of money, in my understanding. It wasn't like there were other schools that were more qualified that got your money, right? So there's a rubric where you had to try to score at least, a 95 out of 130 in order to be granted this money for startup and for all of this other stuff that you want to do. And what was the number that you were awarded? 74?
74? I think it was 6.
Yeah, somewhere in there, right? So again, there's no indictment in that statement. It's just like, that's the fact. That's what it is. And we as a board, we have to look at those folks as having a lens to look at your application. They see a lot of these applications. They see a lot of charter schools. They award money to a lot of charter schools. There's money to be had by them based on the merit of the rubric. So how are you responding to some of those gaps?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely anticipated this question for sure.
Sure.
I would say that our application is not lacking. The application is, according to everybody that we submitted it to prior to submitting it to the board or to the district on September 30th, is a very strong application. The problem with the CCSP grant was, one, none of us are grant writers. And so this was coming off of the application, the grant was due the next week. So we were really hustling that week trying to make sure that we did everything, and we didn't. It was a very monumental task to take 475 pages, keeping detail, keeping everything that they wanted, and condense it down to 26 pages. So I would not agree with you on that statement where you say that the CCSP looked at it and said, this isn't a good application or this isn't viable, because a lot of the things that on the rubric, did you look at all the comments on the rubric? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's stuff in the application regarding that. It was just oversight on our part. We didn't get that in. We didn't think it would fit. We're like, well, maybe we just won't put this in and we'll fit in this other thing. And I think we learned a lot going through the process. It was quite a process. And now that we have the rubric, we can adjust it and reapply next year. In terms of viability of a school based on denial of a CCSP grant, I would argue that that is not a valid assessment of the application, because schools like TCA, they got denied the first year. And they're wildly successful. It's not so much a matter of the application, it's a matter of how the grant is written. And so when I spoke with my contact at the CCSP, because I was understandably a little upset when we didn't get it, like, oh, this kind of saw this coming, but this really stinks. She told me the same thing. She said, a lot of schools do not get this the first year because it is such a complicated grant process. Do this, reapply next year. That was what we were told. So it wasn't your application is not sufficient. This does not show that it is not a viable project. It's more, you didn't get all the points in the 26 pages. So I think that is more the point to take away from that than to say that the application is not viable.
Yeah, I can receive that. I definitely hear that. And rest assured that that's not the only, that's not the only assessment that we're looking at, certainly. I mean, we're looking at this as broad scope as we possibly can. But obviously, that's a kind of a glaring obvious one. It just happened this week, right? Mm-hmm. So we're just like, what? Okay. And so thank you for kind of clarifying. And I get it. I get that to the point of like, there was a time crunch. And I guess I'm kind of feeling that in general. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm feeling for you all, like, to get school started in the fall of 2021 feels like an extreme pressure cooker to try to make not only with facility, but probably more important for me. And again, I realize we have a time schedule here tonight, and we can discuss more of this next week, probably related to things like budget. Like, how are you going to get the money to make this work, A, and then to hire the kind of leadership that you need to oversee an endeavor like this, to get this thing off the ground and get it, whether it's like, I mean, it can be the ugly goose that's flying off of the lake for a couple of years. That's fine. It might catch air and fly and soar, and it might just be an amazing, beautiful thing. And I just need to tell you that, especially in 2020, when all of us are kind of like squinched up, with life, to see a group of people like have enthusiasm and dream big about stuff, you got to know that's inspiring. So in no way do I want to see this thing, not have a chance at all. So I'm not shutting anything down. I just want to know, like, how are you going to do this in the time frame that you have?
Did you get the email I sent earlier with our projected timeline?
Yeah, so that came to me this afternoon, and it was about 2 hours before I stepped in, and I did not have a chance to look through that.
I'll just address one comment you made about hiring the right people. We already have a network of experts who are chomping at the bit to help us start that recruiting process. Because as John said earlier, we're parents, and we have the vision, and the vision was shared by enough parents to make us get to this point. But in terms of hiring a dean of the school and everything else, we have experts who have done this time and time again, who even have ideas of specific individuals that are like, as soon as your charter is approved, let's call this person, let's start getting this ball rolling. And so that, I'm not concerned about that at all. It is a monumental task, but I look at what we've already done to get here, and looking at the timeline, which I submitted to you guys, when you break it down and you realize that one person is not doing all of this, this is truly a community effort. And by community, I mean the community of us up here, the community of you guys, how we will collaborate, and also the community of the charter schools on the Front Range who are all reaching out to us, offering support. And so when you break down that timeline and you say, okay, well, this is going to be, that person's going to do that, and that person's going to do that, and we can do this, and here are our completion dates. We've already completed several of the things on our timeline ahead of schedule, just because we've had so much help and support from the charter school network. So I think it is monumental when you look at it from a whole, but when you really break it down into pieces, it's not as unbearable or unaccomplishable, is that a word? As it would appear. So I think it's very doable. It's just a matter of getting through this process and getting into the contract phase, working out all those details with WPSD, and then leaning on our support system in the charter network to get those people in place.
Thank you, and I will look at that timeline.
Yeah.
this is a Hollywood thing. You have ghost people standing behind us, and you heard 3 of them last week. But there's many more than that in our support network downrange, and they've been marvelous it's this handoff process. Oh, you need to talk budget, you need to talk to Mark Herring, you need to talk to Mark Mary, you need to talk to this guy. We have been focused on the current operation of submitting the application to WPSD. We have also expended energy on the future plans to, how do we go from success on the 16th, always anticipate success, all the way through next August, September, and to the 5-year budget plan beyond that. I was on the phone again today with our finance consultant in Denver, who works for a charter school institute. They do just charter school financing, and he has a network in turn of about several firms across the nation that do just charter school infrastructure facilities. That's all they do. So we're reaching out to those kind of state and national networks to be able to meet that, because you're right, it is a fast-paced event, but we think we can do it based off all the support we've seen and the fact that we're not inventing the wheel. This is an established curriculum, there's an established methodology, there are established rules and regulations. What's different is that we're doing it here. That's what's different up here now. But we are reaching out to additional financial resources. I would highlight that the budget was not part of our base budget. Our bare bones 170 kids kind of budget for that grant. Was I articulate enough there? So, but the people we can't see in the room, thanks to COVID and all that, are really amazing folks. And I'm not trying to get you, we can give names and so on, but like I said, you heard 3 of them. We had 3 of them join us last week, and there's more behind. Each of them has people behind them that are supportive and have reached out to us with information and processes and flat out just this is who you need to talk to for that.
Thank you.
Something that I would offer, good stuff, by the way. Thank you for the good questions and good feedback. Definitely appreciation has been expressed for, the homework, work, the passion, all that good stuff. As a camp director, I've used the word go, no go a little more than I would have liked to this last year. And that's basically a rubber road kind of conversation related to, hey, will that goose get off the water or not necessarily? So just a little bit of perspective to offer in terms of, timing. And if it's a good idea today, will it be a good idea tomorrow necessarily? So really, it's a pandemic. There's lots of upheaval, of course, extra. So just curious what your perspective would be, just in terms of, hey, we've got some go no go marks.
Sure.
That meme or whatever. And so maybe that's just that perspective. What might those be, and or maybe that perspective. If it's a good idea today, will you have built on and how much more that it might be a better option to take off, I guess, 1 year or something like that.
So we definitely have milestones in our timeline, and I do apologize for not getting that to you guys sooner. I know it came later in the day today, but there are a few points in the timeline where it's just like, well, if we do not achieve this by this date, it's not going to work. A lot of it has to do with budget. If we don't have this much money by this date, it's a no-go. So we are aware of those things, and we do have those things plugged in. We're not just going to get to July on dreams and a vision and have no money and no anything else. So we definitely have those built in and have considered that. What was the other point I was going to say? Oh, in terms of the size of this project, I do want to point out, this is not something that we see growing exponentially. At 5-year maturation, we see 2 classes per grade. That's it. And so we wouldn't be growing to 3, 4, or 5 kindergarten classes over the course of the next 10 years. We would stop at that amount. So I believe the number is 524 at maturation. That would be all classes filled to capacity. So it's not something that we want to see grow exponentially. Also because of the type of community feel we want to have in the school. Having a smaller school does lend to more school cohesion, community feel. The house system works better when you have fewer people. It's not something that's going to get out of control, I don't think. So does that answer the kind of the go, no go? Yeah. And if it grows, we would grow the school as the demand grew. So we wouldn't automatically say, oh, next year we're going to have 2 classes of this and 2 classes of this. If we have the enrollment numbers, then we implement that. If we don't, then we don't do it that year. and it might take 10 years to get to maturation. So it would be a slower process unless the demand was there. And then if the demand was there, that's great. Then we go on a lottery system like the other charters down in the Springs do. So, you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, in case the board was unaware, that enrollment is contractually capped as part of the charter granted by the issuing district. And so, depending on what that looks like, once in some established term of years, a charter is reauthorized. And as we've come to understand it, that process is does not resemble the magnitude of this initial process. Is basically like, is everyone's conduct in order and are your finances good? And if so, then we reauthorize the charter. And again, as we understand it, just to be transparent, that things like enrollment caps can be renegotiated at that time. But just as a point of clarity, that should we achieve maturation and achieve, maturation sort of in our 5-year outline, that enrollment's capped. And so when it's reached, we're capped, and until such a time that it would be renegotiated.
And then maybe just a little bit of follow-up. What's been discussed is a little bit the division piece, but then also what the community everybody wins piece is. So on the division piece, maybe that was a demographic. I think you mentioned that piece a little bit. So one of the reps of TCA is all the rich kids go there. So I guess what's your reflection on what that division piece might look like up here? And then, so that's the division part. But on the different side of community, everybody wins piece. In 1 year, what does the relationship between Woodland Park and Merritt look like? What would that be? Is this kind of the stool that's like, well, we're done with Woodland Park, we need something else, kind of thing. So
what do you all want it to look like?
So division side, and then one big happy family side, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, as Jason said, a lot of that is to be discussed in the contract phase. What do you guys want it to look like? And I submitted to you guys also earlier the list of expectations for the district. And I included in that expectations for what you can expect from us. And so we do want a lot of collaboration. It is an in-district school. Yes, it's a charter, but it's not a private school. It's not out of district. It is a district school, free, tuition free for everybody. And I think I had not heard all the rich kids go to TCA, but I can see that. That is not what we want to happen. That's why we're going to do everything we can in community outreach to get the word out about what we're doing to everybody. And I mean, you can't really help who applies, but it is a lottery. And so let's say we're full and you've got all the rich kids and all the poor kids and they're all applying. It's going to be a lottery. It's not going to be like, oh, all you guys can come in because you have more money. So I think that's the egalitarian approach of it. Where that can be lacking is making sure that that information is out there. So that really falls on us to make sure that we are posting it everywhere we can to reach those communities that maybe don't have the internet access, aren't able to tune into this meeting tonight because they didn't get the email, they don't know about it, they don't have the ability. So yeah, that's just the relationship between Merritt and WPSD. We came into this process from day one wanting it to be a very positive community building relationship. And I know in the beginning we did reach out several times trying to do exactly this. Like, let's go sit down with the school board. Let's get some ideas going. And we were told, no, that's not the procedure. So that was very frustrating from the beginning. We did find a time to have coffee with Steve Wolf back in, when was that? September. Yeah. And had a really wonderful conversation with him. And we talked to him again about how we wanted to talk to you guys. Like, well, that's not a procedure. And he did tell us a few things. He's like, well, you need to think about viability. You need to think about success. And so we outlined a couple of things, but we walked away from that meeting feeling like this is going to be a really positive relationship. And I know turn of events, things change, but that was the feel that we got from him, and that is the feel that we want going forward. We don't want to be the weird stepchild off to the side. We want to be part of the district, another choice, and just make it a stronger community. That really is our goal. Did that kind of answer your question? Okay.
I'm gonna ask.
Yeah, go for it.
So I think I would add, when for us this really started to get some traction, and it was this question of like, okay, I think there's enough support here. I think in formal terms, we're going to apply and try to move forward with this and see where we got. I think, again, because there are lots of concerns that have been shared tonight, I think one of our initial concerns is that we felt inherent in that is the likelihood that, and until this process gets to unfold, that this could simply be perceived as very conflictual. And our hope was to try to head that off as early as we could, which why we reached out to the district early, sort of saying, hey, can we meet informally, right? Not to see if we can sort this out, but because we would like to give you all a sense of who we are, again, in the hopes of making evident that the goal here is not to be conflictual and not, for there to be a dynamic of conflict. Lots of folks here tonight have expressed this concern of, well, is this fracturing? And part of the answer, well, has been in some ways, just looking at the data, that the fracturing has happened somewhere along the way, right? We don't pretend to know why exactly, but I would want to frame our goal here as not being the solution, but some small part of a solution to stand in that gap some way, right? And to try to offer enough choice that maybe the fracture that's there doesn't continue to fracture, so to speak, or, doesn't just sort of become status quo. And so, I don't know what the next point I was going to make was, but all of that to say, very much from the very beginning have wanted to give the impression that we're not here looking for conflict. And then my point I was going to make was, on the other side of that coin is very much do want a working collaborative relationship where we work together to try to benefit the whole district.
I think your point about resources is really important. And it's funny, as soon as you mentioned that, I was thinking back to, by the way, we've worn out Nicole Wagner's kitchen table. We owe her a new kitchen table at some point in the line. Way back, early in the process, as we visualized who's your target audience, and that when we talk about kindergartners, we talk about seniors in high school, all the way from ages. Are we talking down in Cripple Creek? What's the geographic? But really it became, we're really looking for, if you have resources, you've already made that opt. You've made that decision. And if you have a lot of resources, and some people have a lot of resources, and that's okay, you can afford a private school. If you have some resources, and maybe you're a 2-parent, 1-career family, then you can afford the time resource to drive down the pass and still take advantage of a public school education, but you're burning 2.5 hours a day, depending on where you're going. If you have some resources, maybe you're a 2-parent, 1-career family, you can homeschool and you can make that choice. But if you're a 2-parent, 2-career, 1-parent, 2-career, 2-job family, you don't have either the money or the time to exercise a different choice. And we really want to bring that choice to those kind of people. I think as I reflect back on the parent meetings we had, I think we're hitting our target audience pretty good. When I'm thinking about who was sitting out there as we were having this very same discussion with them. We are trying to bring choice. If I was going to do one thing different on our presentation, I'd take our pie chart and literally make it pie. Jason's laughing because he's heard this before. The 2/3 of the pie would be apple, and then 30% pie would be blueberry. Some people like blueberry pie. My favorite pie is my daughter's strawberry strawberry rhubarb pie. Everybody's got a different taste. Not everybody has the resources to exercise that taste, and we would really like to bring that resource, that choice to those people up here. That's just, I think resources are a really important question, and that's how we kick that around way early. And so I want to bring that to the fight.
And I think that's a piece of the topic is not a focus on division so much as we all have an uphill challenge to meet. Gosh, I mean, I came from the west side of Pikes Peak, and wow, there's a lot of families who are struggling. And, there's a lot of families that are on that opposite side. And just that responsibility we all have as a community to serve each and every one of them. And that's going to be a challenge for, obviously, you guys getting started, and it continues to be a challenge for the school district being established. And so maybe together, meeting those challenges for the betterment. Yeah.
And one thing I just wanted to add also kind of goes back to Beth's question earlier. I just lost my train of thought. Sorry, I have so many things going on in my head. In terms of, what was I going to say?
If you want a minute to think, I've got just a general comment.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. It'll come back to me.
Okay, so that, and I'm throwing myself out there because this is the first time I've seen your presentation. And the core knowledge and understanding that that's the basis of your curriculum and your education. And this is where I'm throwing myself out there, because as I listen to it, and after having both my kids go completely through the Woodland Park School District system and recently graduated, and sitting on the board for 8 years and working with the administration, that's what Woodland Park School District does. We just don't call it core knowledge. Am I correct in that, Linda?
There are some unique aspects of core knowledge. So there's a lot of stuff that we do. We teach Greek and Latin roots. We teach, that sort of thing. We don't teach Latin, but there is core knowledge is a unique curriculum, and it is all kind of combined. You have math that sits out there. That's not really involved in there.
Yeah.
But the curriculum does have, what's different is that if you have reading, for example, and writing, the history and things like that are closely tied. So we can do that as well. We do that a lot of times. Our teachers do that all the time, but that is part of their curriculum. And there are specific instructional strategies and things like that that are unique to core knowledge.
Okay. But it just, in my statement in that is that made me feel good. That made me feel comfortable because it's something that I'm familiar with, and it is the basis of what we already do here throughout the district. So that was just my comment, that as far as the core knowledge and what our basis is and what we do here. So I appreciated that.
And it's a purchased curriculum. So you purchase the curriculum. The one thing is that it's a national curriculum, so there are some things that don't align, which is typical. Like social studies, for example, does not align in Colorado with what the nation does, because we just have a unique alignment the way our standards are. So that all has to be reworked somewhat. But that's typical. Whenever we do a social studies adoption, we have to do that because Colorado is not the same. If you look at English language arts, for example, you have we're pretty much now with we're pretty much all on the same page when it is ELA kinds of things. So we're all working off the same standards. But social studies in particular, sometimes science is a little different.
Okay. So I gave you time to say. I just wanted to throw that out there. So
that was a great explanation. So thank you. That's what they're going to do. So thank you so much for that. One of the things that I wanted to mention was about the alignment. Is that, again, we're not inventing the wheel. So there are classical and core knowledge schools. I believe it's up in Parker. There's one that's in a rural community that is core knowledge and classical, and they have actually published their information about how they align the two. So again, we've got both support there. We've got evidence-based. We've got people who have already run this in graduated classes through the combination of the two. So I just want to assure you that we know that we do need to work on the curriculum to make sure that it aligns with Colorado standards.
Okay. Did you remember your question?
No, I didn't. No, it's driving me crazy.
Tonight when you get home and you're driving.
It's going to be when my 8-month-old wakes me up at 2 a.m., that's when it's going to come to me. No, I would just say you say, Beth, that you do the core knowledge or a variation of it in the district. We still want to maintain nothing but a positive relationship with WPSD. There are parents who, I'm sure you've talked to some of them, they're not quite as positive as we are.
Without a doubt. But
and
we're always going to have
you're always going to have that. There's always going to be that division. But what I would submit for argument is that there's something that we're offering that's different, that people are latching onto and they're wanting. And to get 192 intent to enrolls, when we tell people at the Charter School Institute, and when I was even talking to my contact at CCSP, most charter schools at this point in the application phase are maybe at 50% of what their projected enrollment will be for year one. So when we budgeted everything, we went off of 170 projected students year one, and we're at 192. So to not only meet 100%, but exceed that, to us, that really drives home the point that there is an apparent need and want for this in the community. And it's a vision from K-12. I know there are different visions among the schools, and then you go from the middle schools into the elementary to the middle school, and it's a different vision. And so I don't think that it's the same type of a uniform vision K-12 as what we want to offer. And I don't know if that's even possible with a larger district. This is going to be a small school. You can do a lot more all the way through with a small program than you can when you're trying to implement it for the entire district. So that's...
Okay. Well, thank you for that, and thank you for the presentation. In the interest of time, unless somebody has something absolutely burning, I would like to call this to an end, and thank you folks very much. And we can, as you come up, if you come up with questions for us, and, we're meeting next Tuesday.
Yes.
So we get the opportunity to sit down and just have some real good discussion. And I know we're looking forward to that as well. So write those down, and if you remember what you were going to say, that'd be awesome.
It's gonna come to me.
It happens to the best of us. So, all right. So our next, thank you.
Thank you all.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We do have our next item on the agenda is public comment. And we did receive public comment that was requested to be read in, and so I'd like to go through those. I do apologize to the board. They're 2.5 pages long, and then WGEA has theirs. So the public comment based on our publication of the charter school presentation tonight, all centers around the charter school application. So the first one is from Peggy Wallace. This is a teacher at Columbine. So good morning. I was hoping to submit. So anyway, she talks about getting her letter in, which she did. Says, Dear Woodland Park School District, RE2 school board members, we are in a time of the unknown. There are multiple novel and shifting variables making it extremely difficult to plan for the future. Even the more consistent variables of funding, health, and daily routine are no longer dependable or predictable, and our ground shakes. As it is, we are also presented with another opportunity led by passionate and thoughtful adults with good intentions. Let us not be overwhelmed, but inspired and equally as passionate and thoughtful. Charter schools have shown great success in urban areas. Urban characteristics, including specific community needs based on large population, filling gaps for underprivileged students, and providing opportunity for people of color are three main reasons urban public schools have been successful. I think she meant charter schools. Most research does not parcel out urban success and rural outcomes in their conclusions. Woodland Park is not urban, so what exists that specifically addresses charter schools in rural areas? According to the National Charter School Resource Center, 2016, rural charter schools will face the challenges and barriers concerning three main ideas: qualified human capital, transportation, and facilities. In consideration of the application for Merit Charter School, it behooves us to encourage the applicants to ensure solid policy and plans to address these three main areas. It may be valuable to encourage coordination and collaboration with the existing Lake George Charter School for feedback and insight about their experiences, successes, and challenges. It is the responsibility of the applicants for our community to do their due diligence in specifically and thoroughly addressing these areas. Additionally, it may be valuable to outline the specifics of charter schools for the community. For instance, charter schools do not have to hire qualified teachers. As an early childhood special educator and parent, it is extremely important for parents to know that their child's teacher may not have any background in the teaching of reading. There are specific windows and scientifically supported methods to teach reading. The teachers hired at the school may not have any training, knowledge, or experience with this. Perhaps it would benefit parents to have a list of questions to help them identify high-quality instructional facilities so they can better assess the potential impact of their child's school experience. Also, charter schools are supported by taking the funding from public schools. How will this impact our district during already desperate times of funding cuts? In other words, how will the addition of this school for some impact the education for all of Teller County's children? High-quality instruction with high-quality educators and community impact are just two of a very long list of things to consider when determining whether this is the right time and place for a charter school. Perhaps the most important question at this time is why now? According to 2018 census data, we have 3,414 school-age children, 5 to 17 in Teller County. We have 2 school districts, 1 private school and 1 charter school already in our community. For elementary students, families have 6 options in Teller County. The convenience of a neighboring Colorado Springs district provides other options for those not committed to our town. Choice for K-5 is not the reason. There are many choices. The answer to this may be enlightening for us all to learn and grow as a collective and open pathways of partnership rather than competition. In addition, the identification of a need through a thorough needs assessment in our community seems like a first step in opening up a charter school that would have intention in being an identified service to our children and families. Thank you for your time and consideration. Thank you for your thoughtfulness, thoroughness, and passion. Our community continues to shine as a beacon for action for families. Sincerely, Peggy Wallace, Early Childhood. She's MA Early Childhood Special Education and Inclusive Kindergarten Teacher and parent in Woodland Park School District. The second one, number 2, says, Dear Woodland Park School Board members, I would like to express my support for Merit Academy's plans for Woodland Park. We are a homeschool family with 9 children, and few exceptions have schooled entirely at home for the last 10 years that we have lived in Woodland Park. Merit Academy would give us an additional option, which we currently find being unmet by the district. Thank you for your consideration. Appreciatively, Todd Wiseman. And so this is the last one for public comment. This is from Michelle Studwell. She's Columbine gifted, talented teacher. To whom it may concern, this is my 27th year teaching in elementary schools. 13 of those were in a highly competitive private school in the Chesapeake Bay area. 2 years were at Academy School District 20 in the Springs, and the rest have been here in Woodland Park. I have taught in 2 of our 3 elementary schools, and my own children have attended elementary, middle, and high school here. I feel that these experiences qualify me to give my opinion about the proposal to open Merit Charter School. Over the last 13 years, I have been highly impressed by the caring and welcoming environments I have encountered in all of Woodland Park's schools. Like our community, the schools are not only open and friendly, but rank as high as, in parentheses, if not higher than, any other school I have been involved with in terms of innovation, student-centeredness, and academics. Woodland Park Schools offer top-notch programs and excellent teachers who are all here to provide the best education for our students possible. That is why I chose to work here and send my own children to school here. Reading through Merit Academy's application, I was struck by the perceived need for a classical academy and kept wondering how the approach of classical academies differs from what is currently offered at Woodland Park School District. I did some research and did not find an answer that indicated a great deal of difference between their missions, visions, and approaches and what I see in our schools every day. It made me wonder if the founders of the Academy have spent enough time in our schools to judge how different their approach will actually be. as an educator, parent, and community member, I feel that it is unwise to add another school to a district when financial resources are already stretched very thin. I believe in charter schools as an option when programs being currently offered in a district do not meet everyone's needs. That is not the case here. Our district's strength is the way our staff work hard to meet everyone's needs and accept people of all backgrounds and walks of life. I feel that our schools offer everything that they should and more. Adding Merit Charter Academy threatens the jobs of our educators and threatens to water down our existing programs because funding for the school takes money away from our 5 current schools. My suggestion is that the interested parties put all of this effort into a team approach to growing our current schools and programs. In this way, we could try to meet whatever apparent need is out there that is not being met. In my opinion, forming another school seems divisive and not in keeping with the Woodland Park community's attitude and beliefs. Thank you for your consideration in this matter. Michelle Studwell, a gifted and talented and computer science teacher, Columbine Elementary School. So those are the statements that we did receive by publicizing your presentation this evening. So those have just been read into the record. That way you also get to hear some of the concerns from the community members that did write in, and also the positives, those that support. We definitely look forward to meeting with you next Tuesday. And if you would like to stay, you're more than welcome to. But you do not have to. It won't be very much longer, but we'll give you that option. Okay, so we are.
Thank you
going to
also
take-
for the cookies.
Anytime. We are going to take a 5-minute pause. This is a little longer board meeting than normal. So if we could do a 5-minute pause, and then we will be back at, it's kind of in the middle too. It's currently 8:07. We'll be back at 8:12.
Hold us to that.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, she was so excited to be on the host. That's good. I'm glad you gave her that opportunity. She was so much fun to watch. Thanks.
You guys want me to pause it or? I can't pause it. Oh. We'll just.
Good deal.
Ruining my childhood.
Okay, exactly.
All righty. We are back, and on the next item is a consent calendar. I need a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Austin,
Aye.
Dottie,
Aye.
Graver,
Aye.
Huber,
Aye.
Leckie.
Aye.
Next, we have information items, and the item there is a legislative update with Brian Gustafson, Director of Business Services.
All right, I handed out a 2-page document for you with some highlights from the last month in legislation. There was a unique special legislative session called a 3-day session by Governor Polis. That was November 30 through, I think, December 2nd. And in that session, they passed 10 bills, the legislature did, failed 25, and allocated basically about $382 million worth of state relief. The focus of that session was, and I listed them there for you, primarily in 5 objectives: business grants and tax relief, technology grants, specifically around remote learning that's so prevalent right now, child care assistance, trying to keep those open and in person, housing and utility assistance for low-income households, and to replenish the disaster emergency fund. The past bills, 10 of them, I'm just going to hit on 2 briefly, but I listed them there with a real brief statement about what each one were. The first one I want to hit on is number 1 there, House Bill S-1001, and that's a $20 million broadband grant program for schools. So if you dive in and look at the bills that were introduced and passed, there's a lot of grant bills. And we've talked about this in the past, that how the level of grants available is increasing. And with grant opportunities comes a lot of work, potentially. Whether that's by staff, time, obviously we heard from Merritt about the difficulties in trying to apply for a very significant grant. And so those things magnify. So some of these are competitive grants, some are non-competitive grants, but more grant opportunities to expand broadband for schools. And the first one there. The second one doesn't really have as much of a direct impact, maybe slight impact, and that's House Bill 1002. Again, grants available for child care centers. So to be able to utilize some of that funding, of course, then child care centers are going to have to go through the application process, see what they can work out there. The other one that I want to highlight in the past bills that has sort of an educational impact is number 4, House Bill 1004. That's a permission for restaurants, bars, vintners to deduct basically $70,000 in net sales from their taxes over the period here of November through February. Okay, basically an exemption from that 2.9% sales tax during that time. That, in the fiscal note, illustrates about a 39 to maybe $53 million impact on the state. And I'm just interested to see how that'll fare out later on as far as money available for state equalization to schools. So, all of these kinds of things have ripples, right? They all are intended to help and will help lots of folks, but there are always ripples. And so I'm curious what the ripples for that will be when it comes to delaying or not collecting certain taxes, and then what's available for future state needed payments down the road. Specifically in my thoughts, state equalization. Does this somehow impact the budget factor later? I don't know, but be interesting to keep an eye on. And you can look at some of those others. Again, more a couple grant opportunities, but also some assistance for emergency housing, eviction aid, et cetera, that's certainly needed in a lot of communities right now. I also wanted to highlight a few of the failed bills, and I think it's important to kind of keep an eye on some of these, because this is a sort of an illustration into what the legislators are starting to think as they come closer to January and into their legislative session. Okay, a 3-day session had 35 bills. right? Yeah, everybody's got to levy and leverage and get their things in there. So you can start to see what's important to folks in the legislature. Number one, that's a remote instruction family stipend program. This would have provided stipends to families for doing remote instruction. Would have been interesting to see. And then, of course, always the question behind these is, what's the fiscal note? Where's the money going to come from? That would have been interesting to see there. But I think some of these things we may see in different iterations come later on. Second one was again another grant opportunity to provide funding for physician services to districts during pandemics. So grants to allow us to go on contract with a physician to help us out. Interesting idea. Number three was one that a lot of districts were interested in. That was a prohibition on the reduction of school funding this year. Basically saying, okay, we're not gonna change regardless of what the student counts say. And that did not pass. So of course we're seeing some changes as things go here. But that certainly an interesting one. And then saw a lot of different bills for tax credits to taxpayers for costs of school closures, and more for individual taxpayers, and maybe even some other different angles on business taxpayers, but just trying to help folks out with tax credits on the impacts. Again, the ripples, like every time schools are closed and kids can't be in person, that's not just the students that are impacted, it's families that are impacted, communities and businesses. You know, it just goes and goes, lots of impacts, as we know. So if you'd like, you know, and you can always email me and I can give you a synopsis from one of our lobbyists that has nice click-through links to each of these bills, and you can read the actual, I guess, the official determinations and verbiage, etc. The big one.
Corbin's got a question.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian, yeah, you mentioned about the sound like they're trying to respond, obviously, to the impacts of restaurants and bars and stuff. Any just quicker insight into like Woodland Park with sales tax, and obviously our restaurants are greatly impacted. Is that bounced back by Walmart and grocery stores still doing rock and roll?
We've been trending well.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't believe I have October yet. Maybe so, but only 1 month so far in this fiscal year was below last year's collection level. And so, you know, knock on wood, that continues. But yeah, so far, sales tax collection has been trending well. And as we've talked about before, likely a lot of that is bolstered by Walmart and the grocery stores.
And the lumberyard.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, which one was it that was lower?
Oh gosh.
Don't worry about looking. I'm sorry. I
Hold
didn't know if you knew that off the top of your head. It just, yeah. I was just curious.
I'll have to look that up.
Okay.
So at least that's one revenue source that isn't going away right now.
Right now, you know, this winter is going to be pretty fascinating to step back from an economic perspective. I think I've said that before. Just to step back and look. You know, are we going to keep spending money here through the holidays from home, like we did in the spring from home, where we really started to spend in a lot of places? Of course, some places are really hurting and people can't spend. And so it's, wow, it's just so unique geographically and regionally. And what will it look like here through the winter? It's going to be interesting. And what happens if we see another little surge after the Christmas and winter holidays of COVID? And then what happens when we start to see vaccinations come to Teller County? All of those are going to have economic impacts. Just who knows what they'll be. The next document is from the Colorado School Finance Project. And I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to give you their briefing document. And I'm going to highlight a few things because this addresses the action item on your agenda, and that's the certification of our annual mill levy. And that's a slightly different and unique process this year. Typically, every year at this time, the board has to certify mills, and that generates, or at least that allows the county to assess the property taxes properly to all the taxpayers, and then collect those taxes and forward them to the schools at the appropriate rate. Okay, that process is different this year because of the School Finance Act from 2020, last spring. And this attempts to summarize that. Essentially, this goes back to the late 90s, early 2000s. Actions then are impacting how we're certifying mills now. And then in 2008/9 legislative session, legislation was passed that froze all of our mills throughout districts if we had debruced. Okay, debrucing means basically trying to get, I guess, maybe pausing some of those tabor restrictions that were brought in back in the 90s. Our district debruced in fiscal year 99, so in a 1998 election. Okay, and the whole idea of this legislation in 08/09 was to cap mill rates at 27 mills. Make a mental note that our program funding mill is 22.55. Okay, and the whole idea of capping rates at 27 mills is to force more local. Okay, the idea is to force more local funding for schools, right, by having higher mill rates. But really, what ended up happening is it forced more state contributions because that 27 mills was below where districts were prior to debrucing. So back in 1998, Woodland Park School District assessed 34.583 mills. I just mentioned to you our current rate, 22.55. Right. So in the first decade of this century, a rate was set at 27. So I'll get to kind of how that all plays together. Okay, this was legally challenged by Mesa County, and the legislative decision was upheld by the Supreme Court. And they had a statute that put into that in place that cap of 27 mills. Okay, so when that was implemented, obviously districts are all over the place, and I'm not going to get into all their different challenges with the mill levels. But basically, it was determined that CDE had incorrectly lowered mills up to the 2008-09 year by allowing them to keep getting lower, like ours at 22.55. It was supposed to be at 27. And it's been determined now in 2020 that that was an incorrect practice. So now the legislature is trying to show that basically local communities and taxpayers owe school districts more, is really what this is saying. It's very complicated. It's hard to explain, believe me. So the process we had to go through this year was look at our debrucing rate, which I told you was 34 and change. But that locked in legislation of 27, which for us was allowed to be 22.55. Okay, we have to compare those three. And you have to choose the lower of the 34 and that 27. So for us, we're going to levy on 27 mills, which is higher than what we've been levying. And immediately in Teller County and other counties throughout the state, eyes are going to get big, right? Did we vote for this?
Yeah.
Did we vote for this? Well, I'll explain that more in a little bit. But basically, we now have a new mechanism to illustrate what taxes should be collected here, and that's going to be in the form of a tax credit. So we're going to levy 27 mills and issue a tax credit to our taxpayers. Okay, and that all happened in House Bill 20-1418 this year and is now in statute. Okay, and that's what this little summary tries to detail. And it's complicated. You'll have to read it a few times to actually get it. But the whole purpose behind it is try and create a little more stability in the local share and put it in front of legislators that there's still this gap that schools aren't getting from local taxes. And why is the state so invested in local taxes? That frees up state budget dollars to not have to equalize. You know, so when the restaurants, bars, et cetera, aren't paying as much in sales tax, when people aren't paying as much in income tax, the state doesn't collect as much taxes, that puts pressure on what they can pay in state equalization. Okay? This is one mechanism that helps try and relieve that pressure. Now, this tax credit, really it's just symbolic. It's not going to actually increase the taxes that we all pay as homeowners or property owners if we own property here this year, but it tries to put it in front of the legislators to figure out a way to start to make that a reality in the future. So that's one of the huge legislative updates that's impacting us in the last basically week and a half as we get to the deadline to certify the bill. So that's information. We can keep talking about it. You can ask some questions. I can try and answer them before we dive into the action item, which would be actually looking at how that calculates out and certifying those bills.
So how will this appear to our taxpayers, to our local taxpayers?
It probably won't.
Okay, it won't at all because of how we're certifying the mills. They're getting charged 22.55.
Right.
Sweet, all right.
Yep. Yeah, I've spoken with Teller County Treasurer and representative from the assessor's office, and we've discussed how that looks. And really, the resolution that you vote on tonight will illustrate the tax credit.
Excellent.
Otherwise, our taxpayers won't see really a difference that's not related to the assessed valuation or credits and abatements levels, things like that.
Okay. Anybody else got questions? Thank you, Brian. That brings us to our board action item. Mill levy certification and House Bill 20-1418 tax credit resolution.
Okay, so before you go through that, I'll point you to the table at the bottom half of the page and show you the calculations, and then you can read through all of the legalese at the top. So this reflects what I just described. House Bill 20-1418 turned into Colorado Revised Statute 22-54-106, some amendments to that statute. Okay, so that's what's referenced here. So we're going to certify 27 mills. That's the minimum compared to our debrucing or prior to debrucing mills. And then issue a tax credit, which is the difference between 27 and the 22.55 that we have set since 08-09. So that tax credit will be 4.5 mils or 4.45 mils. This year, what I did is I included the approximate dollar valuation of each of those mills, just so you can see what does that mean dollar-wise. So that tax credit means about $1.36 million of tax credit that property tax isn't being generated for here to come to the schools. Okay, so the net mill levy is back to that 22.55, our program funding mill that we're so accustomed to. That generates just under $7 million, or scheduled to in 2021. We also have a mill levy override, and that question is supposed to generate a specific dollar amount of $1.1 million. So each year we figure out the corresponding mills to generate that $1.1 million based on the December 1st assessed valuation. That will be 3.582 mills. We no longer have a bond redemption fund, so we illustrate that at 0 mills and $0. And the credits and abatements level, we receive that dollar amount from the assessor, and then we certify the mills to match it. That's 0.507 mills. So the total mill levy is 26.639. Last year we were 21.107, I think, 21.1-ish. So it's about a half mil higher, primarily due to the decline in assessed valuation. Not a huge decline, but some compared to last year, and slightly higher abatements level. So we will certify a slightly higher mill levy this year. And that looks to generate about not quite $2 million in local property tax revenue for the schools.
Okay,
Questions you have there?
no, actually it's very detailed. Anybody questions? All right, with that, I will read the action item. Concerning the financing of public schools pursuant to state law, including section 22-54-106 et al. CRS, a resolution officially certifying the levy of the Woodland Park School District RE2 for the calendar year beginning January 1, 2021, half fiscal year 2020 through 2021, and half fiscal year 2021 through 2022 to the Board of County Commissioners. Whereas Section 39-5-108, Paragraph 1, CRS requires that Woodland Park School District RE2 certify its 2021 levy to the Board of County Commissioners of Teller County no later than December 15th. And whereas Section 39-10-114, Paragraph 1A, 1B, CRS, which authorizes school districts to certify an abatement and refund mill levy in order to recover abatement of taxes. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education, Woodland Park School District RE2, Section 1, pursuant to Section 39-5-128, Paragraph 1, CRS, as amended, and Section 22-54-106 et al. CRS, the Woodland Park School District RE2 hereby certifies to the Board of County Commissioners of Teller County that the school district's 2021 levy on all taxable property within the county shall be as calculated. Mill levy per 22-54-106 et al. CRS, 27 mills. $8,292,406. 22-54-106 et al. CRS tax credit 4.45 mills, 1,366,711. 22-54-106 et al. CRS net mill levy is 22.55 mills, $6,925,695. Authorized override 3.582 mills, $1,100,000. Bond redemption fund 0 mills, $0. And abatement 0.507 mills, $155,813, bringing total mill levy 26.639 mills, $8,181,508. Section 2, Business Services is directed to deliver a certified copy of this resolution to the Board of County Commissioners of Teller County no later than December 15th, 2020. I need a motion to approve as read.
So moved. Excellent job.
Yeah, thank you.
Who seconded that? Okay, thank you. Austin?
Aye.
Dottie? Aye. Graver?
Aye.
Huber?
Aye.
Leckie? Aye.
Sorry, let me point out one other thing. The second sheet you have, there's the worksheet, the calculations behind it. That'll go to CDE. And at towards the bottom, this is one of the items that when I send this information to our treasurer and our commissioners that I have to include, and that's the what if, the full funding mill levy. And you may have noticed that in your property tax statements before. That's the if property taxes covered everything, our full program, that would be almost 63 mills, 62.969 mills. And we're certifying 26.639.
Yeah, that is definitely good for people to see and hear. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to reports. And the first report we have is WPEA. WPEA did send in something that they would like read. And so this is a statement from WPEA for tonight. Woodland Park Education Association is concerned about the timing of potentially adding a charter school to our district. We are concerned that the addition of a charter school at this point in time would add more strain to an already difficult budget situation. If the charter were to move forward and be approved, it would potentially take quite a few students from our existing schools. This would mean losing more teachers and staff in schools where district and school administration are already making difficult staffing decisions. Preliminary estimates look like it could be as many as 10 to 15 FTE losses. It is not, by any stretch of the imagination, guaranteed that staff who might be lost to shuffling students to the charter would be hired by the charter. We are concerned about how inclusive the charter would be for all student groups from special education to ELL to gifted and talented. Our desire is to provide the best educational opportunities for the students in our district. We do recognize that our district needs to retain and attract more students, but the addition of a charter in these difficult economic times would be risky at best for both the district and the charter. We appreciate the hard work our school administration, district administration, and school board have put into improving our district over the years. We also appreciate the amicable relationship our board has with district staff. We hope that you may take our concerns into account when making this difficult decision. Thank you for your time. So that's the WPEA report for this evening. Are there any Board of Education reports?
I just want to give you something to read.
You know what? I'll defer to you if you do. I was going to say, I think I have definitely read enough for the evening, but that the water's good tonight. Okay. Nothing else?
I don't have any reports of that. Obviously, it came out the paper with Steve necessarily, and so to Linda, just maybe ask feedback from our district, whether that be our faculty or feedback from parents. Just kind of
It's been quiet
from your perspective.
I would say that it's really been pretty quiet. So there are some that I kind of think maybe because it took so long that people were kind of getting, maybe had an inkling of what was to come. But so there are a lot of people that are disappointed and what have you. But we have gotten, we haven't gotten any calls in our office, and so there's rumblings, among the staff and things like that, talking about it and so on. But we have not gotten phone calls or
all right,
or anything.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other board comments? With that, I need a motion to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you.
Who's second?
Gwen?
Ian. Austin.
Aye.
Dottie. Aye. Graver.
Aye.
Huber.
Aye.
Lickey.
Aye.
Brian, thank you for being here.